What's up guys, today we're going to be going over the 4th Horseman with its catalyst. We will be breaking down how to get the catalyst and how to upgrade it the most efficient way possible. Then we will be breaking down all the new DPS numbers with this weapon. Then finally we will also be going over an exotic on the hunter that turns this thing into a DPS monster over its entire reserves. So let's get started. First, how do you actually get the catalyst for this weapon? Well, the way I did it was by farming the legendary lost sectors. I have heard that you can also get it from public event chests, Seraph Tower event chests, then also the daily bunker clears. So if you guys know any other ways of getting this catalyst to drop for you, please drop it below in the comments and like each other's comments that have different ways of doing this. That way people in the community will know all the different ways of doing this. I think the most efficient way is just doing the lost sector farm, especially if you have a fire team, because what you can do is just run past all the champions. You do not need platinum rewards. All you have to do is kill the boss and open the chest, and it doesn't even have to be the Seraph chest. It is just the normal regular lost sector chest. And if you're doing this efficiently, runs only take roughly 1 minute. The only thing bad about this farm is the drop rate is pretty low, and it took me roughly like 50 runs to get it, and I've heard of people with even worse RNG. So I think I spent roughly an hour and a half farming for this catalyst, and I finally got it to drop right here. And once you actually have the catalyst and it drops for you, the way to upgrade it is just getting kills with a weapon. And since this is a special weapon and you don't really have that much ammo, so you can't really farm something like the Whisper of the Worm mission, the best way of doing it is using Tether on Hunter, then going to Soro Chi and Last Wish. If you really need to, you can also enter the Wish into the Wish wall to go straight to the CP. Then pretty much what you do is just put down the tether. That way all the enemies share damage. That way you can only shoot one of them and it'll kill all of them and count towards the catalyst kills. Then all you do is wipe, rinse and repeat, put down the rally flag every single time. That way you get your super, and this only takes roughly 30 minutes. So not that bad at all. Now that we have the catalyst fully upgraded, there's going to be 2 things that changes. Now we have a 5 magazine, and also the base reload speed is much quicker. Both changes are very nice and will help DPS numbers. If you guys watched yesterday's video, looking at the damage numbers on Greg was pretty rough. There is a lot of numbers and the game can't keep up. But one thing that is interesting about shotguns is if you hit a headshot, all the numbers and all the pellets are put into one, which is very nice. So what I did was actually use Divinity, which is going to be a 30% debuff. So we just take the numbers that we hit with Divinity and divide by 1.3. We will get to the regular non-debuff numbers. So using this, I can now see only 5 numbers, which makes it a lot easier to tell what's going on. And we just divide all 5 of those numbers by 1.3. These will be the normal damage numbers of all 5 shots. As you see, it goes up by roughly like 13% each time, all the way up to 51.8%, which means in one magazine we're going to be doing a total of 93,385 damage. And now looking at the rate of fire of this weapon, first with one magazine, it only takes 0.651 seconds, meaning 143,000 DPS, which is obviously insanely high and pretty much the highest thing you'll ever see from a weapon in the game. Now looking at 2 magazines where we have to reload 5 bullets one time, now it takes 3.52 seconds, means DPS falls to 53,060, which is quite a bit of a fall off, but this is still actually a really high number for special weapons in the game and just weapons in general, to be honest. Now looking at 3 magazines, so 2 full reloads, it's gonna take roughly 6.44 seconds, means DPS is now 43,500, which falls off quite a bit more. But once again, this is still actually really high for special weapons in the game. And finally, if we do all 4 magazines, which is the total reserves of the weapon, see how long that takes. It's going to take roughly 9.326 seconds, meaning the DPS over the entire reserves of the weapon is going to be 40,054, which once again is still very high for a special weapon in this meta. If we also look at the total reserves of this weapon with double shotgun reserves, we hold up to 20 ammo, which means the total damage output is going to be 375,000, which isn't too bad. It's not necessarily great. It's kind of in the middle for special weapons, so pretty average. So overall, the DPS numbers are actually really good, but there is a few issues with this weapon. Number one, when you do this much damage in this short amount of time, the health bars in this game can't really keep up, and they pretty much regen. Then on top of that, the range isn't great. You can use something like Luna Faction Rift to get double range, which helps, but once again, they just regen the health because the servers can't keep up. Then on top of that, with the spread of the weapon, that will make it hard to hit all of your shots, but you can also use Divinity to help with that. So there are ways of getting around some of these negative drawbacks of the weapon, but the server tick rate is still the raid boss. Now moving on to the best hunter build that will optimize the DPS of this weapon, we're going to be using the sealed arm cartographs, which will allow us to reload the weapon every single time we get a melee hit. So what we can do is shoot off a magazine, get a melee hit, then shoot off a second magazine, only taking 2.77 seconds. I mean, DPS over 2 magazines with this combo is still at 67,000, which is very, very good, higher than even the Wendigo 1 mag burst DPS. But there is an issue with this build. There is a cooldown on this exotic perk. As you see, it does not reload once again on the second hit. It takes quite a while for the perk to be back off cooldown. So what we're gonna have to do is mix in some marksman dodges in between the melee hits to be able to get off more than 2 magazines at once. So now doing that, the first one reloading by melee and the second time by dodging, that takes 4.822 seconds for 3 magazines, which means the DPS is still 58,100, which is really good, still pretty much the highest in the game. But once again, we have another issue where the exotic perk is still not on cooldown after doing the 3rd magazine. So once again, we're gonna have to do a different strategy. Now we're gonna use Middle Tree Solar, which is gonna take advantage of the flame knives, then also this perk right here, where we get our dodge back quicker while enemies are burning. Pair this with the highest mobility you can get, which will help you get your dodge back even quicker. Now with this build, we'll be able to do all 4 magazines without having to manually reload. So what we do is shoot the first magazine, dodge, shoot the second magazine, melee, shoot the 3rd magazine, then dodge once again. And doing this, shooting off all 4 mags only takes 7.6 seconds, meaning DPS stays at almost 50,000, right at 49,000. And with all the other nerfs to things in the game, this is among the highest options in the game, if not one of the highest over the entire reserves of any given weapon. So this build right here is extremely strong. It is probably one of the highest DPS weapons in the game with that build, so definitely use that, and it is pretty much the best way to use 4th Horseman. So recapping a few things. First, the numbers on paper are extremely good. The 1 mag DPS is obviously like pretty much unmatched. Then even without the hunter build, the 2, 3, and 4 mag DPS numbers aren't bad. They're really good for a special weapon. Then if you throw in this hunter build, the DPS numbers even over the 2, 3, and 4 magazines are pretty much among the highest in the game. But the issue with these numbers is that they're really good on paper, but doing them in the game is a different story. And there's a few issues with that. Number 1, the server tick rate is not quick enough to keep up with how much damage this thing is doing in such a little amount of time. So pretty much what happens is you shoot off all 5 shots, and initially it does the damage it should, but then the health bar skips right back up. And this was an issue that also happened with the 1-2 punch builds, and especially on the 2-4 punch builds, this happened all the time because of the fact that we were doing so much damage and the health bar physically couldn't keep up. So even though you're going to be doing 143,000 DPS over 1 magazine, the health bar might just regen half of the health anyways, so it's going to be hard to actually realize that number in game. And number 2, the range isn't that great on this weapon. Yes, you can use Lunafaction to double the range, but not every boss in the game you can get that close, and when you do get that close, they start stomping you, so it's going to be kind of annoying, but you can pull it off. Then the 3rd biggest issue for this weapon is just the damage output. Even though its DPS numbers are great, those numbers are only as high as they are because of the fact of how fast it shoots and not because of how much damage it's doing. Most of the other really good DPS options in the game, for example Whisper the Worm, its DPS number is extremely high because of the fact that it's doing so much damage per shot, and this is the exact opposite. This thing does pretty little damage per shot. It's just the fact that you do so many shots in a little amount of time, and that makes the DPS number very high. But there's gonna be a lot of bosses in the game where you shoot off all 20 shots and they will still be alive. So it doesn't really matter that you do really good DPS really quickly if you don't actually kill the enemy. So between that, the range, then also the health regening because the game can't keep up, it's going to be very hard to actually see this thing be meta in any way, even though the numbers are as good as they are, which is kind of unfortunate because the weapon is pretty strong. Anyways, the rest of the video will just be some gameplay with this weapon. Tomorrow I plan on uploading this for strike bosses, which will help me determine how good it is, because a lot of the stuff I've been showing off so far is just like numbers on paper and not really the weapon in practice. So doing that video will definitely show me how good it actually really is in the game, because of the fact that I expect a lot of the strike bosses, their health bar will regen and all those different issues. So it'll be a really good test of actually seeing it in real use. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.